Well, hello there, good people. Hi, Jason from Green Country Agroforestry here. Today, I would like to talk to you guys a little bit about weeds. What is a weed, and what's the proper thing to do with weeds when you find them in your garden? Let's have a look back down here again. No, let's get in close. Closer. So it may be surprising to a lot of people that most weeds don't really identify as weeds. If I were to ask Mr. Grass here, Mr. Grass, are you a weed? He'd say, no, I'm a valuable species of grass that many people love to have in their luxurious lawns. Just cut me back on a regular basis and I'll look nice and neat, and everybody will ooh and ah about how green and lush and soft I am. Children will love to play on me. I'm not a weed at all. But here in this particular bed, since I'm the one who's doing the choosing about what is or is not a weed, grass is not something I really want here. So I'm going to pull out this grass. I'm not necessarily going to get all of it because it's got little tiny roots and it's everywhere really, but I'm going to reduce the amount of grass that we have growing here. And whenever I do that, I open up space on the ground for other things to grow. And here's an example of something else that can grow. This is a little mint plant that's starting to establish itself here. Let me clean it up a little bit. It's gotten a little damaged. But now that we have space on the ground all around it that it can spread to, that little mint plant can take off and fill in the space that we've just removed the grass from. This plant here is a castor bean, and castor beans are good for getting rid of little rodents that like to burrow in the ground. So we're growing a bunch of these this year in the hopes that we can crush their seeds and sprinkle their seeds around and mix crushed castor bean seed. Hopefully we don't have to go to the trouble of actually expelling the oil for this. And that scent will help deter rodents and get them to decide that maybe this area isn't a place that they want to live after all. Ultimately, I don't want to be pulling weeds all the time and having to do this stuff. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe there's a way of managing your garden so that these plants that nature produces in such abundance that they swarm and overwhelm the other things that you're trying to grow, right? These things here, maybe they're here for a purpose, right? And perhaps what we could do is try to find species of plants that will fulfill the purpose that this grass is fulfilling, but will work better with what my idea for this space is supposed to be, right? This particular plant is called oxalis. It's a wood sorrel, and the thought of my mind is, if wood sorrel or oxalis wants to grow here, then there's a niche that's being filled by this particular plant. This one in particular, the oxalis wood sorrel. And my thought is, I can replace this oxalis, which doesn't really do much for me, with an oxalis tuberosa, which is the oca. I can plant oca in these areas where oxalis seems to want to grow, and that's an oxalis, so it'll fill the niche, but it'll also be a productive plant that I can eat as a vegetable. This here is a foraquat, which is a fairly popular garden flower, but it grows, and see, I've just broke it off there, and it has a tuber underground that it grows back from, but it grows very, very large, lots of mass here, which makes it a great biomass plant, don't get me wrong. But it grows this huge amount of mass above ground, and it can absolutely block everything around it from getting any sun. So I don't want to encourage it in this particular bed at all. There's a spot over there, the other driveway, where it's got a place. And I got a little violet down here, and the violet's fine. It's a low-growing ground cover. It's not going to choke anything else out, so I can keep violets. Well, yeah, if they're thick enough, they can choke other things out. Let me back that up. A violet or two here and there is a delight. an entire patch of violets can choke other things out. And of course, I guess that is the idea of ground cover. You're trying to choke out the competing weeds. So you're going to have something. What is it? You're going to have something growing. You can have something that you don't want, or you can have something growing that you can live with. Violets are a nice companion. Clovers are nice companions. Alfalfa is nice. Alfalfa is nice because if you let it go, it produces big flowers. You know, big plant, big flowers. They're pretty. If you cut it back, it's fertilizer and growth hormone. So no matter what you're doing, if you're growing a ground cover layer of clover and alfalfa, you're coming out ahead. Either you let it grow and you enjoy it for what it is, or you cut it back to favor some of your other species, and you get to harvest it for its other benefits. If you've got a whole bunch of different things that you've planted, you can let nature take over to a certain extent. And nature will do the choosing for you, picking which plants to favor at what point. Well, now we have all the weeds out, we got a lot of bare ground, and as we know, nature wants to grow something. So I've got a mixture of clover here, mostly white clover, a little bit of alfalfa sprinkled in there. It's all inoculated with its own necessary nitrogen-fixing bacteria. So we have ground cover that we're sprinkling on here. It'll grow in, hold the ground down, and lay the grass down. Okay, so we've removed all of the weeds, removed all the debris, and we're going to water in our new seeds. Oh, not with that setting, we're not. Shoot. Let's put shower on it. There we go. All right, so we're watering our seeds. Not too heavy. So there we go. With our area weeded, we got it seeded. New ground cover. Now we got to handle the problem of needing worms and other stuff in there, don't we? I got a solution for that. Let me show you. Looks like somebody has found himself a nice spot to take a nap over there. But down here, we're seeing that now the clover that we planted is coming in. Let's see about adding some worms to this garden space. Okay, I'm back here underneath the redbud tree near our little tiny garden space, and about a month or two ago I set something up here, and I'm getting ready to show you guys how to set it up for yourselves, but I want you to take a look right down here. So what we have right down here is this curious little collection of stuff, starting with a 27-gallon tough tub. Used to be a worm bin. It got broken. See, it has the hole right there, but it's still good for covering up things. And a couple months ago, I took it and used it to cover up this pile of yard debris, which is some sticks and twigs and stuff like that. You can see it's kind of dried out on the top. There's some Bermuda grass and other things here. Let me just pull off this top really quick here so you can see what's underneath. All that little sticks and twigs and stuff. So this was yard waste. This was weeds, and there was some grass and some other things here too, for that matter. But we went ahead and we piled this all up in one spot, and we doused it, kept it good and wet, and we kept it covered so it was nice and dark in here. And I doused it with a little tiny bit of ammonia, just as a Kickstarter. Oh, I wound up with a can there. So I doused it with a little bit of ammonia as a Kickstarter because that draws the earthworms in. They really like the smell of ammonia, and that can be from manure that's decomposing, or you can use. I use just a little bit of kitchen ammonia mixed in with water to pour on the top. Now I'm not gonna Not going to draw too much away more here, or too much more away here, or you'll start to see them squirm as they attempt to escape. Let's get the rest of this. Let's get the rest of this dry material. Oh, there's one. There's one. He's like a little. Looks like a little snake. Lost his tail, little guy. All right, he'll recover. He's just squirming away like a little snake. But that's an earthworm, and that is what this entire pile is absolutely full of. I'm getting ready to show you. All right, this will just knock your socks off. All right, so this mound right here, just a couple of months ago, was mostly yard waste, grass clippings, weeds, that sort of thing. I had a little bit of other stuff that I just scraped off the top here, just so you can see what's inside. But we're getting ready to go ahead and open up this pile here, which is mostly, and I mean mostly, after 2 months, mostly nothing but worm castings. So that's nothing but worm castings there. That was weeds. It's now worm castings. I didn't have to build anything special. All I had to do was pile them up in one spot and wet them, give them a little bit of ammonia to draw the worms in the first place, and then cover them up so they can stay nice and dark and let nature take care of the rest. All right, we've got all of these worm castings right here. I mean, this is a big pile of mostly worm castings. Let's see what else is in here. Well, let's see. Do you see them? There's one fell through the screen. One fell through the screen is already down there. There's one shovelful. One of the worms fell through the screen right off the bat. Here's another one. Let's give him a hand. Go on down there. Go on down in there. There you go. Okay. We're just going to move some of this stuff out of the way. We're probably going to get a couple more go down into the screen as we move it. There's 1, 2, 3. There's a big one there. 4 more. We're just going to sift this material here. Get some of the big stuff out of there. So here we have, and there's the last one just dropping down in there. And so here we have a little bit of rock and heavier material that's left behind on the screen, but mostly all the weeds that were in that are gone. We got a little bit of rock and some twigs left. Okay, that's good. How many was off the first shovel? It was quite a few, right? See if you can count them this time. All right, remember, count the worms. Count the worms. Okay, one shovel full, worms going on. See, this is how you catch worms, right? You have to have something the worms want, which in this case is decaying vegetation. Food. They want the food. So you put out the decaying vegetation. They need a moist environment. We've provided that by spraying it down. They like that smell of ammonia. That indicates that there's something there for them to feed on. That draws them in from the surrounding environment, and they come in and they start feasting on this decaying vegetation. But you have to use that cover, that tub, and you could use a tarp or something else for that matter, to keep it from drying out. See, here we go. This big fat worm right there. Here's a big fat worm right there. There's this one here. Oh, there was another one there. Another one there. Another one there. How many more worms do you think there are in here? Oh, there's one. Here's another one peeking out here. Oh, there he is. And there's this one. So lots and lots of worms here. Lots of worms. The mighty blue worm. Look at him. Look at him go. All right. So we want to have a whole bunch of these, and we do have a whole bunch of these here. As you can see, dig through that whole bunch of blue worms in here. And we want to be able to have a whole bunch of blue worms in our garden. You ever come outside in the morning some night after it rained and have a look around and you find a bunch of earthworms on the surface that are dead? It's not because they drowned. Earthworms like a lot of moisture, and whenever it rains, they come up to the surface so they can enjoy the feel of that moisture on their skin. But whenever the sun comes out, the light paralyzes them. Whenever there's direct light shining upon an earthworm, it can move for a little bit, but after a short amount of time, they go perfectly still, and then they dehydrate and dry out on the surface. That's what happens. So it's important to make sure that while you're trying to attract and grow earthworms, that the area that they're in remains perfectly shaded. You can do this with trees like the ones we have here, and of course canopy coverage. The more layers that you have, the better the shade is going to be at the ground level. Or you can use a container or a cover over your piles to keep the worms safe and dark. Aren't they lively? So we're going to set the same thing up right here, and we'll use these very weeds that we just pulled out to do it for a new worm pile right over here. Now that everything is rotted down already, we're going to put it right here, this spot. You can see it's all wilted and dead. We don't have to worry about it growing back. Well, at least most of it. And then we got our weeds. And there's going to be a couple of sticks in here too. Don't worry about sticks. This provides extra aeration, places for critters to move about. You don't want it all to be quickly decomposing material. Doesn't all have to be fresh green stuff. You can include some dead, dry, brown stuff too. It's all going to be dead, dry, and brown eventually anyway. And we want to just pile it up. Pile it up high. This is the important part. You want it to be thick. If you have this just sitting out in a thin layer, the thin layer will dehydrate, it'll oxidize, and it won't turn into soil. Some of it will at the very bottom. So we pile it thick so you have more depth for the moisture to seep in and more surface area for the microbes and the worms to work at to turn that into soil instead of having it just oxidize. Mint, little milkweed, fig tree. We've got some Asiatic dayflower. We got a few spiderworts here, right here at the edge of our worm pile. A welcoming garden gnome, more mint, castor bean. Hopefully between the mints and the castor beans we can deter the rodents from nibbling around in here. But down here we've got a nice carpet of clovers started all through here, and that's great. We're going to need to draw some worms in and some more stuff to fertilize and soil build, so let's get on to that. Oh, and of course that will feed this lovely tomato plant over here. Here we have a fresh batch of brand new organic matter for decomposition purposes. But well, actually, there's quite a bit of it. Let's see if we can make it in a smaller, more manageable size and fold it up and break it. Something. Put that right there. All right. There we go. And we got some more there. Well, that's a lot of vegetation. Oh, look at this! I found some pokeweed back there, and of course pokeweed, as we all know, high in protein that breaks down, high in nitrogen. That'll be good. Let's put that on. That's looking pretty darn good. Instead of using some ammonia from the store, we're going to use a handful of our worm castings, and we're going to kick it off with at least a couple of worms here, which are going to very quickly find their way down into that material. I'll put a couple more in here. So that's just a good attractant for them, right? Get another couple of worms. All right. So there we go. I've still got plenty of worm castings, plenty of worms. I could build more piles and spread these guys around if I need to. I'm going to do that because I have other worm piles in other parts of the garden. Now we're not necessarily going to cover them all up like we'll do with this one here. But once we've got a source of ammonia on there, we've got lots of vegetative material, we got some dry stuff, we got some green stuff. It's time to wet it down. All right, now we're going to soak this down really good. maybe some of the sticks and twigs too, why not? All right. So now we've actually gone ahead and layered in with extra material the ability for air to circulate in the pile. We don't want the worms to overheat. We don't want them to hit. We don't want them to overheat. There we go. Let's scoot this back just a touch. And our gnome will hold up the welcome sign to welcome the worms to the new worm hotel. And hey, that's all I got for you today, good people. As always, I hope you found this video informative or entertaining. And if you did, well, you know what to do. I will catch you next time. Until then, get out there and keep growing.